Failure is a four-letter word in our culture. We try to avoid it, we are afraid of it, and to the poor soul upon which failure happens, we just look at them and feel so sorry. Failure, unfortunately, in our culture, is something that really keeps us from reaching our full potential. There's a modern day parable, I don't remember where I've heard it, but it goes off in my mind over and over and over again because of its teachable moment. A corporate CEO is getting ready to pass on this big, successful company to the next generation and selects 3 likely candidates and calls these 3 likely candidates into their office and says, one of the 3 of you will be the next CEO of this company. And into each hand of each of the 3 people, the CEO puts a seed. Go and bring this seed to flourishing growth, and when you come back, whoever has achieved the greatest growth will inherit the job of CEO. So off the 3 go, and over the next 6 months, the CEO brings them in to check on their progress together. And the first time they come in, person number 1 has got this shoots coming out of the pot and everything is looking wonderful. The next one has got this beautiful starting of a flower, and the 3rd one's just got dirt. The CEO looks and says, well, you're on your way. Come back in another 3 months. And so they come back in another 3 months, and here one is a flourishing plant, the other is a flourishing flower, and one's just dirt. And the CEO says, go back one more time, take another few months, and bring the results back. Now, as you can imagine, the person who's got just dirt is just sweating and in tears and saying, I just don't know what to do. I've been doing everything I could. I've been fertilizing it, watering. I've read up on how to make this flower grow, but nothing. And so they go back for the final check, and they've still got nothing in the pot. So these 3 line up. One beautiful plant, another beautiful flower, and a pot of dirt. And so they're facing the CEO, and the CEO comes and looks at each of the pots and turns to the one that's got just dirt and says, what happened? He's like, I can't get anything to grow. I can't get it to grow. I fertilized it, I watered it, I put it in the sun, I read everything I could about it. I'm so sorry. I failed at bringing the seed to grow. And the CEO looks at the person and says, you will be the next CEO of the company. Because what you all did not know was that before I gave you the seeds, I boiled them so they would not ever grow. And so the 2 of you have got some explaining to do. And so while the failure to bring forth growth from this seed was apparent, in that failure, you saw the worth of the person, the integrity, the honor. In the other 2, you saw cheating, lying. And so the moral of the story is that a failure can bring out our best. We can grow beyond our limitations, and we can be seen for who we are and our full potential. This is what's happening in the story of Jesus and Peter in John chapter 21. If you don't know the story of Peter and his relationship with Jesus, let's just recap it for a quick moment. He was one of the first to drop everything and follow Jesus. He was enthusiastic to a fault, jumping in with both feet, eyes closed, fully committed. He wore his heart on his sleeve and put his foot in his mouth. And through it all, he loved Jesus. In fact, when Jesus is looking at his followers shortly before he's crucified, he says, you know, every one of you is going to desert me. And Peter says, in Peter fashion, even if everyone else deserts you, I never will. And we go to the story where Peter denies Jesus, not once, not twice, but 3 times. 3 times afraid to disclose his relationship with Jesus for fear of his own life. And so, in John chapter 21, after Jesus has been denied by Peter 3 times and he's been crucified, Peter and company are fishing. Jesus appears and has this conversation with Peter. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? 3 times. 3 times, do you love me? Jesus was pointing not to the failure of Peter. Notice Jesus did not ask him, why did you deny me? Why did you desert me? He didn't ask those questions. He asked, do you love me? That's what was really important. That is what was under the surface of the failure. Sure, Peter, by anyone's human eyes and human estimation, had failed. But we're reminded very powerfully by the Old Testament scriptures in 1 Samuel. Man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at what? The heart. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? Peter loves Jesus. And Jesus takes the opportunity to reorient what success looks like. Because after each one of these questions, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? There's a call to serve. And it's not coincidental. You go back to when Jesus was foretelling that he would be crucified. And directly after, while they're walking along the way, the disciples start arguing about who's the greatest. It goes like this from Mark's gospel. They came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, Jesus said, he said, what were you arguing about on the way? But they, the disciples, were silent on the way because they had argued with one another who was the greatest. Talk about being, kind of caught and, exposed. Can you imagine, walking with Jesus and arguing with each other about who's the greatest? And Jesus says, what were you arguing about again? He sat down and called the 12 and said to them, whoever wants to be first must be last of all and servant of all. So our challenge is Failure is not the real problem. The fear of failure is. Thomas Edison had a great quote when he says, failure, we don't know exactly, where is that quote? Many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. The life of faith is a challenge. And there is failure around every corner. It has to be that way because we learn to succeed through stretching beyond our limits of courage, beyond our limits of love, beyond our limits of faithfulness, reaching further, coming up against and going beyond those limits. We find where those limits are when we fail. One of my New Year's resolutions was to get back into the gym. Anyone have that resolution? Anyone still doing it at the end of the month? Yeah, a couple. Well, you know, there's this concept which is not very inspiring at all when it comes to weightlifting. It's called training to failure. Does anyone know training to failure? It's really the only way to do strength training. You lift the weight until the muscle can't lift it anymore. So if you can only do 9 and you just can't muster up number 10, you just keep going till you fail. This is very depressing, actually, because the entire workout, you're failing at the end of every single thing. But when you look at the next workout, you see that progress is being made. And so the challenge that we have is, have we failed recently? If the answer is no, maybe like 2 out of those 3 CEO candidates, we might be cheating at life. If the answer is no, maybe we've let the fear of failure take over so that we try to press the limits. But Jesus, very clearly in his example this morning, addresses failure with uncovering the full potential of the person. You know what Jesus had said about Peter in the scriptures, even way before John chapter 21. Called him the rock. And upon that rock, Jesus said, he will build his church. That's looking at the potential. That's looking at the heart. That's how Jesus would have our failures become our full potential. Let's pray today. God, we are afraid to fail. Because failure in our place, in our time, brings criticism, brings inadequacy. But you have already created each of us with wonderful gifts and with a place to serve and a work to accomplish. So continue to be present with us, opening to us the full potential that you see that maybe we don't even yet see in ourselves. Heal us when the failures we endure hurt. And help us to heal stronger, more courageous, and more faithful with each new day. Till you build upon us as you built upon Peter the rock, your church. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.